Wouter's going to talk today about his second book. You're all very familiar with his first book, Flights to Nowhere, and which we published for him. And this is the second in the series. And I've spent the last few days editing Wouter's stories to get them ready for printing and for printing the book. And there are some very interesting stories that he's going to talk about.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's always lovely to have aviators in front of you. I've spoken to many audiences. I've spoken about different subjects, the unsolved mysteries of Southern Africa, the missing planes and everything. Mystery just gets people. They don't want a mystery. They want to know why there's a mystery. And that's quite important because we're always seeking answers and that. And it's the same with aircraft accidents. Now, before I go into a little bit of detail, it's not a long presentation, but I want to show you the basics of an aircraft accident. And I want you to put yourself in the situations that we will show you. Meaning that imagine yourself in the cockpit when this accident happens. The book that's coming out's got 8 different types of accidents, but there's no way that an accident can be categorized with one subject. CFIT, controlled flight into terrain, is always coupled with other things. There's a reason. So it's not so much about what happens, it's about why it happens. And I've found with the research that I've done that in this country, by our regulator and ourselves, we do not learn from all the mistakes. We do not. We need to start learning from the mistakes. If we can save 25% of people who would have had an accident, we've already come a long way. And I'll show that to you. We need to learn from mistakes. I'll use one example. After the accident in the Vaal Dam, where the helicopter flew into the water, you were all familiar with that one. The regulator said they should put floats on all the helicopters. Go and look at the report. I'm still getting rid of the lines from frowning. Okay. And I thought to myself, if the guy had floats, and you look at the accident and you look at the video, he wouldn't even have thought about deploying the floats. So, what's the point? So that's the kind of thing I found while researching this. And I promise you, it's not a long presentation, but I want you to see what we're up against. Right, just as a matter of interest, the black and white picture up there is a plane we found a month or two ago. It's a Ventura, Carl. You'll know about this. Somebody found the wing on the beach, way down on the beach near East London, Port Alfred, and he walked on the beach. It's very remote, and he had his dog with him, and suddenly he saw a funny object. He's not an aviator, he's not an aviation person, and he saw the shape and he said, this is not normal. So he called 43 Air School. 43 Air School called the East London Museum, and the East London Museum called me. So I said, I can't help you, send me pictures. So they did, and we found the wing. So we found out that this crashed in 1944, and it was a crash with one of the engines caught fire, and the guy just landed on the beach. They left it there. So with time, the one wing came loose from the, and it's a very rough area with sea and stuff like that, but it was lying on the waterline there. Incidentally, that was the low water mark. So it got covered up, and one of the wings came loose, and it went down, and it came out again later. But that wreck is still there. It's this deep under the sand. All the people survived. It was just a crew, and they were doing a ferry flight between squadrons, and just dumped it there. They said there were many accidents of the Ventura, so just, okay, leave it there. Right, so that's just as a matter of interest. Right. The accident types that I found is significant, and I want to mention this. The CFIT one is at the top for a reason, and I'll show you that now. Medical, not so much. Air shows, not so much. Crop spraying, moderate. Training, a lot. Not so many accidents, but many incidents. Many incidents. We'll get to that. Technical, not so many. Game capture, quite a few. Non-certified, also in the average category. Weather, lots of them. Unexplained and unusual, not so many, but there are, believe me. Human factors, a lot. And design, not so many. Okay.
Where's the fuel? Fuel mismanagement.
Technical. Right. I want to show you this. I found the following. If you take a weather accident, it's usually coupled sometimes or most of the time with a pilot error. So everything ends up being somewhere connected. So you'll have a technical issue and the crew would make an error because of a human factor. That's what happens. So all these are linked. In fact, the Wonderboom accident was technical, human factor, pilot error, and crew. All of those. So that's important to see. There's never one thing. If you have a guy flying through bad weather, and you put 10 pilots next to one another, and you give them each the exact same flight, because each weather situation is like a fingerprint. Nothing is the same. They would most probably 9 would fly through and 1 will die or have an accident. So that's just to give you an idea. Right. I'm also going to give you the main categories of each type. Weather, usually have visibility, wind shear, storms, downdraft, heat, and density. These are the things that weather is coupled to in terms of your flight, in your 3D world that you're flying. You have pilot error. I'll get back to that. That's the one case I'm going to look at the end of this. Decisions, big problem. Haste, not so bad. Identifying the problem. I don't know why we can't identify the problem. Rectify the problem. Pressure and inexperience. Inexperience is something we need to live with, but it can be made better. Okay, interference, packs, animals. I just want to stand still at that one a little bit. A guy was flying crocodiles from Zambia, and the vet didn't euthanize, or not euthanize, put them anesthetize them. Yeah, so one of the crocodiles, he sort of woke up asking for something. Anyway, so he wanted to get out. So that's the kind of thing that we're dealing with. If you fly animals, it's not so easy, really. You have to rely on the vet. Okay, cargo, you remember the case where they had the Boeing 747 with all the military vehicles on, and as they took off, everything, and it went, right. That's that kind of thing. Traffic, mid-air problem, mid-air. Okay, emergency on board. There was a case just a few months ago in America where a guy got up. I don't know why he was upset, but he was upset. He was really upset. And they had to land the plane and get him off. That's the kind of thing that it becomes an interference, but if you can't handle it in the air, it becomes an emergency. Right, and then obviously, if you see smoke, it becomes an interference and changes to an emergency. Right, human factors. Personality. Do not ever think that personality of a pilot doesn't have an influence on an accident. Don't ever think that. It's a real thing. Personality. The way you handle an emergency, the way you handle a situation is directly related to your personality. Remember that. Stress, not so much, but you remember the guy that flew from here in a 182 and he flew into a building in Johannesburg in, I think it was the 80s or somewhere, 70s or something. Yeah. Yes. That's the kind of... problem, personal stress problem kind of thing you get. And he also had a suicide tendency. But he wanted to kill his girlfriend, but he killed other people next door. Yes. And then obviously CRM. Again, CRM is coupled to personality. Okay, it's actually cut and dry. Emergency, incapacitation and attack. For many years people thought that incapacitation was the problem with the read book. It wasn't. Oh, have you seen that case where the guy, he was not very happy with his company employing, or they let him go in America, and they had a cargo flight and he started attacking the crew with an axe and a... Yes, and they actually survived, believe it or not. He didn't, I think, but they did. Right.
Underpaid.
Yeah, he was underpaid. Okay, training. This is a thing that's changed in the past 10 years because we've taken in many people from outside. And I'm not talking about a certain race. I'm talking about people wanting to learn to fly on our standard. And it's pushed up the training incidents a lot. It gave me the impression that we have a sort of a sausage-making machine trying to get everybody out. You have an instructor, he's got 205 hours instructing somebody flying around the kopie at Wouter, and if there's an emergency, it becomes a big problem. I'll explain that to you also a bit later. Habits adopted. Now, this one is interesting because I've flown with many instructors. The one instructor says to you, "Why are you doing that?" I said, "But the previous guy said I must do it." "He's crazy." How on earth can he teach you that? Have you found that? Flying with an instructor? That is a problem. So stick to the basics. And then obviously skill, which is a subject on its own. Then ATC. The relationship between pilots and ATC, I hope will someday be nice and good and constructive. It's not.
That's a fairy tale. You believe it will change. Serious.
What he said. Okay. Airspace type is important. Who are you talking to? If you're under radar control, you're going to have a different kind of person talking at Pietersburg Civil's radar control or whatever, or the local guy at Wonderboom or here or wherever. It's a different kind of ATC. You can't get away from that. Radar sometimes is nice to talk to. You can hear this guy's not been in the industry for 2 days. He's been there for a while. So that's the kind of thing. So if you fly IF, I always fly IF. I love IF because you speak to people that give you the correct instructions. Okay, pressure. ATC can place you under pressure. And that is a thing that training has a problem with. The students are scared of ATC for some reason.
Justifiably.
Yes, justifiably. Assistance, do they give you assistance? I've had about 5 cases where the pilot, you could hear this guy's looking for assistance. Please, I don't know what to do. And in the end, he didn't get what he was asking for. And then obviously comms. I did a relay about a month ago in the 210 where a guy was flying through Johannesburg airspace with a 172, and you could hear this guy's a solo student or something. I don't know how he ended up there. And we relayed, and he said, "But you need to turn right now. Where are you? What do you see?" This, that, and the other. Through a relay. You know how difficult that is. And the problem was on his aircraft. The radio wasn't very good. And then technical, AMO. AMO, okay, I need to say this. I went and had training as an AMO for 3 years for one reason, is that when I'm in Timbuktu where I was, I wanted to know if this goes dead or that, or I do my pre-flight, I know what to look for. I will always, till the day I put my head down, promote the fact that pilots should somehow, for at least 6 months, go and work at an AMO to see how to do a pre-flight, to see where the battery is, to know why if you fly with a 172 and everything goes dead, it could be the alternator. You won't fall out of the sky. It can still fly because the mags are making the power. So you'll be fine. That kind of thing, I think, is lacking in our country at this moment, in the industry, in fact. They need to get better technical training. It saved me many times. Aircraft design limits. We can say a lot about that, but I think that's a subject on its own. Aircraft design limits in terms of technical. We always promote people, design new things, we need new planes, we need this and that and the other. But there are design limits. If you go back to the films you see of 1930s and how they flew with there's one with a grey goose. It's a beautiful thing, and it's got stuff turning around and the guy sitting waiting to take off. That's the kind of thing that's changed. But our designs are becoming more scientific, and we need to know that. And then lastly, crew. CRM is a real threat. Still, all of you know about the Tenerife accident. It's still a threat, CRM. And also back to personality. We're there. Personality and CRM. I will always prove to you that that is coupled. That and that. You will hear a pilot walking away from a SAF Air flight. The co-pilot and say, yes, that was a bad flight. I say, why? Did you have turbulence? What? No, the captain. He didn't give me a chance. He didn't speak nice to me. He talked down to me. He told me I'm stupid, that kind of stuff. That's the problem. That's our biggest threat in CRM. And then seniority obviously goes with that. And whose duty is what? Who does what? Created many accidents. But I thought you did it. You should have done it. This was your job because there were no communications. All right. Enough of that. Okay. Timeline in an accident is where and when the accident starts. Now, I need to say this. There's never an accident without a timeline leading up to the accident. The moment anything in the timeline is broken or changed, the accident doesn't happen. Let me give you a stupid little example. You're traveling to the airport and you drive there, no hold-ups in the traffic, nothing. You get there and you fly and something goes wrong and you end up with an accident. Let's say you were driving to the airport and there was a power outage and you take a bit longer. In the end, the timeline was broken. So the accident doesn't happen. So you'll find in each and every accident, you will find a perfect timeline. A perfect timeline. I'll show you. The timeline or an accident can start like this case. Japan Airlines Flight 123 started 7 years earlier. That's when the accident sequence started. So I'm going to use this thing. So 7 years ago, they'd made a wrong technical on the bulkhead fix. 7 years later, the plane falls. See that? And then you have an accident like this. Now, this accident at Wouter is a shorter timeline. Much shorter timeline. So you always have that. If you can break the timeline by training, information, and that kind of stuff, the accident doesn't happen. Okay, the timeline starts at the accident or the incident. The first thing they do is select the factors involved. Have you heard that they say we're looking for the four corners of an accident scene? Okay, that's one of those. Select the factors involved. Did it burn? Where did it end up? The guy that flew to Botswana, what's his name? He had a Greek name or somebody. He died later in a King Air, where they walked a few days and so on. Why did he end up where he ended up if he was actually flying to Maun? You know, that kind of stuff. So you need to take in everything that's staring you in the face. After that, you analyze the sequence of events. Where did this accident actually start? The sequence of events. Think about your own situation. If you've ever had an incident, I had two. And if I think back, I knew exactly where the incident started. Complete the timeline. Make sure you have all the parts of the timeline so that you can see why this accident happened for later use and saying, people, I did this, don't do that. Right. Determine the probable or the factual cause of the accident. Let's go back to the helicopter accident in the dam. They said, put floats on all the helicopters. What would be the correct thing to do in a case like that? The regulator and everybody else should send out something and say, people, be careful of the black hole effect, the reflection of the water. This is what happened. Please be aware of this, instead of saying, putting floats on the helicopters. That's the difference. That's constructive. That makes a difference. Putting floats on the helicopter costs money and it doesn't make a difference. Make recommendations. We do not make recommendations. And I'm not saying that the regulator alone should make recommendations. If you have a flight school or a club or a whatever and there's an accident or an incident, make sure that all the members and all the trainees knows exactly what happened and what they should do not to make it happen again. That's what we're lacking. We are not communicating enough about causes of incidents and accidents, and that's why we have them. We should do that. It's extremely important. If you want to live, communicate. Right, let's talk about this case. Does anybody know about this case? The guy who had a CFIT near Nelspruit. No, it was a Piper Cherokee 181. Okay, let me give you a bit of background. Student pilot, he flew from here, Rand Airport. Not a student pilot, he had 100 hours, 100.7 hours, he had a PPL. He took 2 friends with him. They flew from here to Kruger. At Kruger, they wanted to go to the Kruger National Park, which they did. So they landed the first day, and then say that they will get back here the second day, or the day after. So the next day, he got into the aircraft with his 2 friends. He had 100.7 hours, or 110.7 hours, 2 takeoff attempts. Now, let me take a step back. When he took off the first time, the weather was marginal, so it was special VFR. Now, think about this, 110 hours special VFR in the mountains in the Lowveld with a Cherokee 181 with 2 passengers and full fuel. Think about this. He took off. As he got to the bad weather, which was at the escarpment, he said to ATC, please, I need to turn back. Good decision. Very good decision. He turned back. That's what he should have done, and he did it. He landed back. They waited for 2 or 3 hours, got back into the plane. The weather was now better at Kruger. And he said he's going to fly back to Rand now. Right, so what happens next? He takes off again. But before he takes off,
Hello. Come on in.
okay, so I want you to picture this in your mind. Before he takes off the second time, what does he do? Remember, he made a good decision with the first takeoff to come back. The second time, before he takes off, he phones his instructor at Rand. What do you think I should do? There is a bit of weather at the escarpment. Still, this is 11, 12 o'clock. The instructor says, maybe you shouldn't fly. Maybe you should wait a little bit more. He phones his parents. His mother and father says to him, sleep over. We'll pay for it. Just don't fly if you're not comfortable. Don't fly. Okay, so he talks to the weather people. Yes, there is a bit of weather, but the weather's clearer to the north. He doesn't mention anything after that. He gets into the plane, thinking, most probably, and this is probably, that as it gets worse, he'll turn around again. So he gets into the plane. 2 friends with him and he flies. Now this is where the problem starts. Let's have a look. This was that was the start of the timeline of the accident, where he said, we're going to route to Tsanin. What did he do? He came to the escarpment. He was told that the weather to the north was better. So what did he do? He wanted to go via Tsanin and then to Rand. When did he make that decision? Exactly. Let's have a look at it. He took off there from Kruger. He flew and he came up to the escarpment. There where the yellow arrow is. That's where the accident started. When he said on the radio, he made the decision, I'm going to fly north. You see the intended route there? I'm going to fly north. So what actually happened? Flight planning, was it done? What do you think? No. What happens when you decide in the air that you're going to change your route? What have you got in front of you in your new direction? Nothing.
Confusion.
No flight planning. You don't know what's ahead. Nothing, because there was no flight planning. You are flying the aircraft. You make the decision now to turn in a different direction. What do you think you have in front of you? An unknown. You have 110.7 hours. You're flying into very bad weather. What are you doing? That's the problem. The decision was made during the flight into an unknown situation, which ended up in disaster. Do you see where this comes from? You have to make sure that you know what's ahead of you. If you make a decision during the flight and you change your heading or change your plans or whatever you want to do, know this. You are flying blind. Know this. I don't care who you are flying blind. The sad part is, he had a 430 on board. GNS 430. Go and look at the instrument. The one he had the rain clearance on it. He flew straight into the mountain. Right, let's look at some cases in closing. The Aquarius HS748 at George in 2002 was a CFIT accident, controlled flight into the rain. There's a lot of stories why it was a CFIT. Remember what I said, it's not what happens, it's why it happens.
Hansie Cronje.
Yes, Hansie Cronje's flight. It was a CFIT accident. Now, I was on that plane exactly a month before, in the same seat, also hitching a ride down to George. And I saw with my own 2 eyes, and it's in the book, you'll see it, that there were 2 GPSs with the rain clearance, one for each pilot, on the dash mounted. I saw it because I was a new pilot, new commercial license. So what do? You actually see, you look what these pilots do. It's a wonderful experience. From a 172 to a HS748, it's like, you can't describe it. So I was watching these guys, sitting in the jump seat behind them. The cabin door obviously was open, and I was watching what they're doing. It was an amazing experience. A month later, they died. Medical. The Bell helicopter, that was a technical problem, as you all know. That was a technical problem. Yes, in Natal. Air shows, there are a few of them, L39 at Clarksthorpe and so on. I don't really like to talk about air shows because it's completely out of my field. I'm not an aerobatic person. I'm scared of aerobatics. So I'm just mentioning it in passing.
I saw the L39 plane.
Yes, so that's what air shows one.
Giancarlo Franco.
Wouter, can you and I have a discussion?
Yes, of course.
After this.
Yes. Crop spraying, Christian Witt, 2021, that accident. Now, just remember, this guy did this flight not often. And as you know, those of you who do crop spraying, it's a science on its own. Okay. So you have to be prepared. There's a reason people say do 3 takeoffs and landings. There's a reason people say fly IF before you go fly with passengers, all that kind of stuff. There's a reason for that. Training, failed go around, JTC, I believe it was here at Boksburg or Brakpan somewhere. Training accident. And then technical, the convoy at Wonderboom was partly technical, handled wrong by the crew. Game capture. Please let me just stand still on this one for a little bit. This helicopter accident was regarded as shot down. The helicopter was shot down. Okay? Keep that in mind. When you look at the hole through the blade, there is absolutely no way ever that a blade turning at that speed will have a hole that looks like that. It's almost straight through. So, okay, I was at loggerheads with the regulator about this accident many times. And what happened was I investigated the accident, set up a report, gave it to the court. The CIA gave a report and they took mine. Just on that. They said, but how can you say that it was not shot down? I said, because I spoke to about 5 helicopter pilots who flew in the war, and they said, we've had 5 holes in the blades, and we still flew. So one little hole this size, no way. All right. And then I explained how the guy saw the wires too late, and he dipped down. He had to make a decision, over the wire or down the wire. As he went down, the blade touched the wire. The second blade came around, cut off the tail. And you can actually see the arc marks on the cable. I said to the person doing it, I said, but can you see that? Yes, but that, okay. So the guy crashed. And as you see, as the tail boom was cut off, the helicopter started turning. And as you turn it once, twice, with the speed, the density, altitude, and everything, you find exactly where it lands up, exactly like it should land up. So everything was there. You just need to follow it. Okay, so that was a sad case. The families are still at each other. Non-certified. This was mentioned to me by Charlie Marais, FKO banner incident. I'm not sure about that, but I'll talk about it in the next book or whatever. The King Air 90 at Lanseria in 2015, that was a bit of a mystery to me in terms of the fact why this plane crashed. And I looked at this accident. I haven't studied it so much, but it was completely put on, the cause was weather. Weather created this accident. It's not possible that only weather can create an accident. There's a pilot involved, there's an aircraft involved, there's speed involved, there's everything is involved. It can't just be weather. Okay. The Eclipse jet, you know, remember this guy who flew to Cape and then he just, the Eclipse jet. That is a bit of an unexplainable thing. I looked at the flight path that the radar gave, and you follow the flight path and you think, okay, this is what's going to happen next because he was incapacitated or he had a pressure problem or whatever. And then suddenly the flight path changes. So why did it change? It's a very mysterious case. Human factors, Rietbok definitely. And design, the KR2 at Kitty Hawk with the wing that came off. So that just gives you an idea of how many there are. But not one of those has got one cause. There's always the spider web of the accidents.
Can I just say that last one that you had there, Kitty Hawk, that was a football that flew the aeroplane outside its limits. So it's not the design of the KR2. It was the individual that did it. He was a renegade, and he paid the price.
Same with the Raven.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. This was given to me by the International Research of the US NTSB, which I found, which they sent to me. I sent them an email. I said, listen, what do you think are the biggest causes? Because I want to compare it to ours. And lo and behold, it's not much different. The largest cause of fatal accident in general aviation is the loss of control in flight. What does that actually mean? Losing control in flight. Think about that. What is losing control in flight? there is a reason why you're losing control in flight. Okay? So they took, it's actually a sort of a global thing. And they said, that's the main thing that happens in accident, losing control in flight. Various reasons for that. Other significant causes of fatal accidents include power plant failure, which I can tell you now is not a very big one. Unintended flight into instrument meteorological conditions, yes, big problem. And also CFIT. CFIT problem. And you can go and ask yourself, but if somebody flies from here to there, and you remember when we had the ruler and we put it on the map and we say, where's the highest point? Let's stay at that altitude. What do we do now? GPS. No, we'll be okay. All right, we won't. These causes are generally related to pilot error. Many of these accidents could have been prevented if the pilots had better judgment, knowledge of the aircraft systems, and a better understanding of weather patterns and general aircraft procedures. Now, this is a generalization, I must say that. But it is actually quite true. Additionally, factors such as fatigue, stress, and distractions also play a role in contributing to these type of accidents. I find this very generalized. I think there are some of these that are actually needs to be looked at more intensely and analyzed and focused on, not a generalization. Okay, that's the book that's going to come out, Air Accident Essay. There will be 8 chapters. That's if you want to order it. There are few left. You can talk to me afterwards, and it will also be filmed as a television series, which is going to be extremely difficult. Because when I dealt with aircraft that was missing, I had a family that said, we're hoping they're going to walk through the door in the next minute. If you deal with families who has lost somebody in an accident, it's a different story. They had closure. They are mourning this person, but they at least had closure. That's completely different. Okay. Any questions or suggestions? Or
I've got lots, but it will take time.
I'm sure you have, but we need those. I just want to end off with this. I hope you agree with me that our communication of the reasons for incidents and accidents is not what it should be. We should communicate these results. Please, if you can in any way, think of a way to do it. Even if it's just in your little circle, do it.